How many of them are independent? How many newspapers portray government achievements? Because if you are an independent newspaper, where government goes wrong, you should write it. Where government goes right, you should also write it. Now, we have the press, and we have laws to govern the same way that even policemen that are supposed to enforce law, they are also governed by laws that will make sure that they don't violate the law. Nobody's above the law. So, independent press, I don't know what they mean by independent press. But I remember in 1994 there were only two private radio stations, Radio Seed and Radio 1 FM. Today, how many radio stations do we have if Gambia is not free? But also, how many independent press are they allowing in EU member countries? Islamic websites are being closed on a daily basis. And the people that live in their jurisdiction that they know subscribe to the Islamic website are being arrested as suspected terrorists or plotting one thing after the other. Almost every month they will arrest so-called terrorists plotting to do something. How many of them have been convicted? You remember a case where some Pakistani students were arrested and it was, everyone was led to believe that they were plotting a bomb. Only to be released after almost 2 years in detention because there had no evidence against them, because they were framed. Do you understand? Now, Muslim clerics in most European EU member states, if they talk about jihad on 2 consecutive Fridays, they'll be arrested or deported. Just saying that we have Muslims, we have to stand and defend Islam, the jihad is against this and that, they will be deported or sent to jail. When freedom of religion and worship is sacrosanct in any civilized society. Now you go to any Western country and you say there was no Holocaust, you can go to jail for that. But if you stand there and say there was no slavery, nobody, they will clap for you. Right? Now, you put on a veil as a Muslim. In certain countries, you either take it off or you are fined or you go to jail. The EU is not saying anything about that. You talk about religion. Now, so any bloc or group of people or institution whose activities are ungodly, against God, against religion, there's no way we can work together, because this is a country where whatever we do is in respect of the Almighty Allah and in respect of our religion. Who invented democracy? As we speak democracy, it's the Greeks. Now, what was the rest of Europe doing when the Greeks were practicing democracy? Now tell me one country in Europe where the Greeks imposed, the Greek Empire imposed their democracy or their values. None. Now, whereas Greece, well, the Greeks were practicing democracy, the rest of Europe were raiding African countries and occupying them. When you look at a particular revolution in Europe, one EU member state, this philosophy or the slogans were equality, fraternity, and justice. Equality, fraternity, and liberty. After their so-called revolution for them to be free from monarchy, they decided to come to Africa and colonize with disastrous consequences. Now, who are the Europeans to tell us about democracy and freedom? It is an insult for any European country to teach Africans democracy. Africans are better democrats than anybody, because we stayed in our continent, we went by our rules. They left their countries because they were hungry. They came in, we welcomed them as friends because we are members of the human race, and they decided to come with guns to colonize us. And not only did they go beyond colonialism, but they ended capturing the cream of Africa to make them slaves. That has greatly underdeveloped Africa. Because it's the cream of Africa, the farmers, the producers, the future of Africa that was being taken and sold into slavery just to industrialize Europe and get them out of poverty. Oh, so now tell me, during colonialism, before 1950, which party existed in the Gambia? Or they were here in 400 years. How many newspapers were in the Gambia? If they are now turning around, say, freedom of the press, independent press, when the British were here, give me the names of 2 newspapers that are Gambian-owned and were critical to the colonialism when they existed. Also, for 400 years, name me 3, 4 doctors that were trained by the colonial government. Or name, and I challenge the British to give me the names of Gambians that were trained by the colonial government to become doctors, scientists, and whatever. Gambians were only relegated to standard 7, which was the highest, and you end up being a clerk, no matter what you are. Now, you know that there cannot be good governance without education. There cannot be democracy without education too. There cannot be food self-sufficiency without education. How is it practically possible that for 400 years of British colonialism, they built only one high school, that's the Armitage High School? You cannot also develop a country without a healthy nation. And for 400 years, the British left us with only 2 hospitals. Now, who is a better Democrat? Dictator Jammeh, who has developed Gambia in 18 years, or the democratic colonialists who occupied and exploited this country for 400 years, leaving us with only one high school that was built by the colonial masters. Now, if you are talking about, they didn't talk about liberalizing the market for trade, to enhance trade and investment. They didn't talk about agricultural inputs or what we should do to improve our agriculture for us to live a healthy, self-sufficient, food-secure life and in prosperity. They did not talk about improving the health infrastructure or equipment so that we will not be sending our patients to Senegal or overseas for treatment. They did not talk about our road conditions. They did not talk about electricity. They know that we want to build a university campus for the University of the Gambia at Faraba Banta. They didn't talk about that. All what they talk about is independent media. What do they mean by independent media? What percentage of the population are journalists? And then they talked about improving livelihood for the criminals. So it seems that all what they're interested in is to enhance our downfall, which we will not accept. The agenda is very clear, and my position also is very clear. The position of I'm also grateful that Gambians are conscious of what their intentions are. And when you look at conflicts in Africa, these are all proxy wars. All mineral-rich African or resources, natural resources, rich African countries that stand up to them have a problem. If you don't give them what they want, the way they want it, you are a dictator, and for some strange reason, all of a sudden, the people that they say are rising up as a result of abject poverty are able to get very expensive weaponry to fight the government. And these are people that are fighting abject poverty and now are able to get multi-million-dollar costing military equipment to fight the government. Where are they getting them from? And one thing that is also interesting, Western media are able to locate these people, or in a crowd they can tell who is anti-government and they interview him. How do they know that? Because these are the agents they send in the form of journalists, in the form of so many things. They say human rights defenders. I'm not aware of a human rights defender in this country